Hello ladies, I'm Mrs. Sherman and I have a homemaking blog which I will leave the link for at the bottom if you want to go and leave a comment there. I don't have any comments on the videos. And today I would like to continue the subject of royal conversation. And the reason I'm really going with this royal thing, like the royal family, the royal clothing, the royal speech, and the royal household, the royal home, is because of all the videos I have done for the homemaker, in support of the homemaker, which is what this series of videos is for those of you who are home. It has become the most popular. They are the most watched videos. And if you're home and you're a homemaker, you're doing it alone basically. Even if your family is around you, you're the boss and it's your job, because I'm looking at it from a biblical point of view. The Bible says that women are to guide the home and to keep house. And if she's not able to do it, at least she will see that it's done. And so today I would like you, if you're home and if you're feeling rather isolated or alone, here's something that you can listen to while you work. I heard from someone the other day who said that she had listened to 2 of my videos in a row and had been able to get her dishes done, sweep her floor, rearrange her living room, and clean up 1 bedroom. So that's pretty good for two videos. And it's nice background noise, and it's always nice to have company when you're working. And today I am wearing my lemon yellow apron, which I also got at Hobby Lobby when they were having their clearance sale, and I'm using my daffodil teacup to go with. And this is one of the things I spoke of in the last video, that if you want to feel royal, you're going to have to act royal. No drinking out of paper cups today. Get out some of your teacups and use them. They're actually better off being used because teacups do well when they're used and they're washed in hot water and they're dried and put away and they're used again. They just they seem to get stronger, just like we do when we're in hot water, I hope. So today I want to start a little bit on your own speaking skills, which I will go on at another time in more detail. But first of all, to become noticed or to be listened to when you speak, you're going to have a good appearance. Because somehow, because we're in this physical world now, we know that people should like you for who you really are and what your heart is. But we live in a physical world, and appearance does have an effect on people, and we are affected by visual things. So have a good appearance. Make sure your hair is in place and you're well dressed as best you can if you want to be heard. And also there are different ways to have pleasant conversation. Now, when royalty has to go somewhere and they have to visit some of these charities, they do not contradict people. They do not argue. They're not allowed to. They have to follow a certain protocol. They're trained in how to just say just the right things and to be pleasant and to leave people feeling better and to build them up. And so they are really good at something that maybe we need to learn more about, and we need to treat ourselves like royalty in the home, because the home, in my opinion, the home is just not some place you just crash in and just treat like it was just a pigsty. You want to be elevated in your spirit, elevated physically too in your home. Nobody wants to go to a terrible home. No one wants to live in an awful place. So that's one of the reasons to have homemakers at home, because they make sure that it is going to be a pleasant place to live for themselves and for those that they're in charge of. Now, the first thing I did when I got up this morning was to take care of my appearance. It's very tempting because in the home, you put your robe on and in the morning and you're on your way to the bathroom and you see something that needs to be done and you think, oh, well, maybe I'll just have a cup of tea, or maybe I'll check the mail, or maybe so it's very hard. But to take the day that you decide that you're just going to lays around in your robe and your slippers, that's the day everybody seems to come to the door, or you're needed somewhere in a hurry. So always be prepared, even if no one sees you. Get ready and get dressed. And the first thing I did was make myself a little cream with a facial cream with some vitamin E and an oil, and such as avocado oil or grapeseed oil or something like that, for my face. I have no problem with people wearing cosmetics, makeup, facial foundation to cover blemishes, as long as it's natural, as long as you look natural. But I don't think it's good to put it on bare skin. I think you should have some kind of a barrier, some kind of layer of skincare on your skin. And so that's what I've been using lately. I'm an experiment. I'm not saying it works, and I'm not telling you to do it. Don't do it just because I do it. It might not suit you, but I showed you in the last video that I had used this little combination of vitamin E and oil, and I will tell you what it does for me. I have a really bad skin condition, and when I use that vitamin E solution that I make up myself, I don't itch and burn as bad. My skin does not irritate me so much, and there's not so many eruptions. So that's what I did, and then I fixed my hair. And of course, being dressed makes me feel, and having the apron on makes me feel like I'm in charge of the job. So I would suggest, there was a lady that came to Our Lady's Bible class today, and I had been rushing around at the last minute, getting things ready, and I didn't take my apron off, and I sat down. And she said, I do like that apron. I must get myself one of those. Where did you get that? Because she liked that it was a bib apron, because this is where, of course, all the flour and water falls on you, is right in this area. So I just wore it, and I also kept it on when I went to the grocery store, because I just needed two things, and I wanted to run in very businesslike and get some things, and I always check myself out as a self-check. And so I thought, well, no one will notice, because it's a lot of trouble. You take it off, and then you have to pull it over your head too, and find a place to hang it up, and then leave, and then come back, put it back on, and I practically live in it. So I decided I would just go to the grocery store and come back and keep it on. Well, you would have thought people were looking at a clown when they saw me. I could feel it. I saw it, the stares, and the looking around at each other, and the raised eyebrows. And yet every cashier was wearing the store apron with the store brand on it, and the butcher in the meat area was wearing an apron, and the baker in the bakery section was wearing an apron, and in the deli they all had aprons on. But here I had this apron on, and it was over my skirt and top, and I was getting all kinds of looks. But they probably wanted to know. Here's probably what they think. Every business has an apron, and it has the logo of the company on it, probably wondering where I worked, because I had lemons on mine. Maybe I work for a lemon company. But I just thought it was amusing that I got so many looks and stares, and people following me with their eyes to see this apron. And it also looks like a little dress, because it has a skirt on it. Now, if you're having trouble getting used to skirts and dresses, this is what I would suggest you do, is wear an apron. Because even if you're still wearing jeans and t-shirts, if you put one of these aprons on, you're actually wearing a dress over it all, and you get used to this feeling. You get used to having something pretty, something floral, something colorful that goes with the day, or goes with your mood. And so start wearing these kind of aprons. It's like wearing an overdress. And so I would suggest you do that. Now, I also have something that I'd like to read to you, since yesterday I didn't get to. And I don't know if you remember me telling you yesterday that royalty always wants to represent their kingdom and their country in a good light. And they also want to encourage people to be loyal to that kingdom. Now, we can behave like royalty as homemakers And we have the same goals, don't we? We want our families to be loyal to us, and we want them to love the home, and we want to create happiness around us, or create at least the atmosphere where they can be happy. And so I mentioned Romans 12, which I said I wished I had memorized by now, but it's a portion of Romans chapter 12 which so cleverly tells people how to speak and behave. So I want to read that to you today. And by the way, if you have something to do, such as the laundry, the dishes, the floors, the writing your bills, or sorting through some papers, or cleaning a bookshelf, washing windows, whatever it is that has to do with homekeeping, whether it is baking bread, turn the volume on so you can hear it above the roar and listen to me. But please don't sit here and watch me, because there isn't anything to watch and I'm not doing anything. I'm making these videos as companion to homemakers and support of homemakers, so they'll have something to listen to. I know I often tune into some place on the web that's reading a book that I'm fond of, and often wish that there was something more. And I also have things that I'd like to record for my own family that they can listen to later. So this, I'm sharing it with the world too. Okay. The marks of a true believer, I believe, is contained in Romans chapter 12, but I'm going to read just a few verses from that my husband always reads this when someone asks him to speak and he wasn't prepared and he didn't know that he was going to be called on to speak or to say something. He'll pick this portion of Romans chapter 12 up and read it. He practically has it memorized, and one time he quoted it all. He was standing up and talking to people, and after the little session was over, someone came up to him and said, "Man, I've never heard anything like that. That was such a good sermon. Can I have a copy of it?" And he said, "Sure." And he opened it up to Romans chapter 12. And this is what it sounds like. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. You might want to look that word up, abhor. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. I love that. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. I love the goodness that's in here. It's talking about harmony. It's talking about it's not portraying someone who is anxious and nervous and upset and always questioning. And it's someone who has confidence. And so to have that, to read that whenever possible and dwell on it, can help a lot in giving you confidence in the home. And there's much more I can say about that. We were singing a song in our ladies' Bible class called "Father, Hear the Prayer We Offer." Now, I'm not sure when that was written. It could have been at the turn of the century or back in the 1800s. I'm not sure. But the words struck me as something that we don't think about too much. We want everything to be smooth, don't we? We want everything to go well. And of course, if you're keeping house, you know it doesn't work that way. Someone was telling me today that they were trying to do something or change something in their house, and it took a lot longer than they had planned, and kind of messed up all their other plans for the day. Homekeeping is a whole lot different than business. Anyway, Father, hear the prayer we offer. Not for ease that prayer shall be, but for strength that we may ever live our lives courageously. Have you ever thought about maybe homekeeping, housekeeping, and homemaking requires courage? It sure does. Let me suggest, do you have a box of things or do you have a part of a room that you don't want to go into because it frightens you, because it's jumbled, or it's a mess, or something you need to go through? It's going to take courage to open that door and go look in and see what you need to change, see what you need to put into order. And so it does take courage to be a homemaker in more ways. So inside the house, while you're there, it takes courage to keep going and to tackle things that maybe you hadn't before. But it also takes courage to be a homemaker in a world where people might ridicule it, question it, and maybe even accuse you because you're home. And that's a whole nother video we could do. So I want to suggest too that when royalty is speaking, they are doing it with a purpose. And it all sounds like small talk to us, but it's all designed to enhance their own value and help other people. So there's a lot more to it. And I mentioned last time that we all have our own home speak. Everybody develops their own culture, and we do it because of certain things that have happened, and then we develop a saying from it. And so one of the things that we have is we have Bible speak, which just came naturally because you just naturally think of some of these things. For instance, when all of us were coming into the house and making a lot of noise with our feet, I would say, behold, a troop cometh, which is when one of the children of Leah was born in the Old Testament. Apparently he was so large, they said a troop cometh, or maybe it was talking about what he would be like and what his family would be like, but that was a saying from the Old Testament, a troop cometh. The other thing that we would say is consider the ant, because someone gets a little bit frustrated, or they don't know how to begin, or they want someone to organize it for them. Consider the ant. The Proverbs talks about these creatures that don't need an overseer. They don't need someone standing over them and telling them what to do all the time. Consider the ant. They don't have an overseer, and yet they know how to store food. They know how to get ready for the winter. They know how to create a colony. And so consider the ant. Now, I also want to talk to you about two very courageous women that I knew. And one of them was a friend of mine whose husband had bought a farm that was very old, rundown place, and it didn't have a house on it. It just had an old, I guess, animal shelter on it, and they didn't want to rent a place while they were getting it ready or building a new house. So the wife, who was a friend of mine, did something very courageous. She cleaned that place out, and she put beds in there, and they slept in there, and she also created a place where they could create meals. It was only temporary, and it was only for the summer, but she did something that a lot of women won't do, and she had a lot of courage, in my opinion. She saved them a lot of money while they were building their house. They had to live there, and I thought of all the things she must have gone through, trying to find water, trying to find, the conveniences that she needed. And but she took care of her family, and they were always clean. They had clean clothes, they had good food, and they had just cleaned out this little shelter on the farm. I always thought she was quite brave. I thought my own mother was quite brave too. And so I just wanted to tell you about her and maybe save the other lady for later. And I want to now, and don't forget, you need to be doing something. If you need to fold something, sort something, cook something, be sure and do so while you're listening to this. Yesterday, I started on the figures of speech of the Bible, and I tried to include some of our own figures of speech that we use today that are being lost and how important they are. Figures of speech, the way that you can identify them in the Bible is often when you find a figure of speech, it will say which is like. So you know that that's a figure of speech, which is like. And a like figure, or an allegory. It will say is an allegory. So that's how you know, as we discussed what an allegory was. Well, the Bible says this is an allegory, or it will say which is like. So now, and we talked about the metaphor. So we talked about the simile, the similitude, the metaphor, the allegory. So now we're going to talk about the metonymy. It's a figure of speech which exchanges the name of one thing for that of another on account of some relation between them. There are some varieties. The cause is stated, but the effect is meant. Luke 16:29. The cause is stated, but the effect is meant. And we do this all the time in our ordinary language at home, but maybe we don't know it. Here's the quote. They have Moses and the prophets. Now, of course, it meant their writings, because obviously Moses and the prophets no longer were with them. They have Moses and the prophets. It just meant in their writings. Or the effect is named when the cause is meant. And that's Luke 2:30. For mine eyes have seen thy salvation. It meant Christ, the source of salvation. In Luke 2, verse 26. Or the name of the container is used to denote the thing that is contained. 1 Corinthians 11:26. This is a tricky one here. For as oft as ye drink this cup, well, nobody actually drinks a cup, but it meant the contents of the cup. They will not be drinking the container. So as oft as you drink this cup, meaning container. Now, we have some very similar sayings in our own daily life in our kitchen, probably. And you could probably think of one right now. I actually can't, but I know there are some things that we say which would talk about the container, but means the contents. Okay. So, parents are put for their children or descendants, even as it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated, was not said of the twin boys, but of their children, meaning not favored. Matthew 4:2-3. Okay, and then there's synecdoche. Synecdoche. It's a figure of speech in which anything less or anything more is put for the precise object meant. Here are some varieties where the whole is put for the part. Luke 2, verse 1. All the world meant the Roman Empire at the time. Or a part is put for the whole. Acts 27:37. 260 souls. It meant souls is put for meaning the whole man. And often, even in old writings of the previous to the 20th century, a soul meant a person, not just their soul. Okay, here's one that's a little easier to understand, and it's called irony. This is a great one to use. We find this easy to use, don't we? Irony. It's when the opposite is meant for what you say. It's a figure of speech in which what is meant is the opposite of that which is stated. Job 12:2. I love this one. No doubt, but ye are the people, and wisdom shall die with you. That was when all of his friends were telling him to give up, and he's looking at him saying, "You are the people, and wisdom will die with you." Elijah made an ironical ridicule of the prophets of Baal in 1 Kings 18, verse 27. Sarcasm. That's a figure of speech that's easy for us to understand. A satirical remark uttered with scorn or contempt, a taunt, a jibe, a cutting jest. The soldiers kneeled before Jesus, mocking him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." This was bitter sarcasm. Well, of course, they didn't really mean that they thought he was King of the Jews. They were mocking, making fun of him, calling him a king. And they did not know. They just, it was a way of ridiculing him. So, hyperbole. A manifest and impressive exaggeration for the purpose of expressing the full force and increasing vividness of the subject presented. Psalm 119, verse 136. Streams of water run down mine eyes because they observe not thy law. Well, of course, there weren't real rivers of water running down David's eyes, but it's like poetic license. That's what hyperbole is. And so I wanted to tell you a story about a very courageous woman who I'm sure that everybody knew her better than people that knew her for 40 years knew her much better than I did, because I only had an acquaintance with her just before she died. And so I wanted to tell you about her. And that was when she was young, apparently one of her children died. From what, now I may have been getting all this wrong, but I tell you what I thought she told me, what I can remember the best. And then when she and her husband went to a certain town, her husband suddenly just ran off, just left her. And she had, I believe, was it 3 children? I'm not sure. So he just left her, and she said that it was such a shock, and the church where they had been was going to help her, and they helped pay her rent and helped her as best they could. And she kind of made a ministry of it, because she thought, this is what she told me: if they're going to give me money and help me, then I want to do something. So she found out all the needs of the church members, and anything she could help with, she would do, whether it was taking someone to a doctor's appointment, or whether it was helping with children, or just anything, any kind of thing that they needed, a meal, anything like that. And she developed this ministry, and other people began to contribute and to support her. And this was long before GoFundMe. And this is, and she was quite an energetic, amazing lady. But she told me that she went through a period of time. Also, her daughter went away to a college for a while and got sick and died suddenly. So, and then she said within just a couple of years, she went from a family of 5 to just 1 to her. And so her losses were just many. And she said that she would often wake up like David, and her bed would be completely wet. Her pajamas were wet, her hair was wet, she was just all wet because she had cried so hard in her sleep, and she didn't realize it. And there were times when she was so just so out of it and so unhappy that she would ask God, she begged God, just let me die with the rest of them. Let me go, just let me die, because life was so difficult, and also losing your loved ones is very, very difficult. And she said that after a while of praying that prayer, she'd wake up every day and she'd be alive, even though she'd asked to die. She'd wake up every day, and she said, I finally figured out that God was not going to let me die. So I said, I guess I better get busy and do something. And she said it was like God had said, finally, you're listening to me. So she developed the most interesting life. she had a notebook in which she kept track of all the members of the church and their birthdays, their anniversaries, their special needs, and she made appointments with everybody, and she was busy from morning till evening. And she had traditions, like every Sunday night after church there was a certain family that would come over. The preacher's family would come over. That was just a tradition with her. And she found that this life was also self-sustaining, because people would make sure she had enough food in the freezer so that she could serve all these people that she was showing hospitality to. She was so busy. Her social life was so tremendous, and that was how she lived all of her life after that. But I heard her tell that story more than once, that when she finally figured out that God wasn't going to let her die, and she said, I guess I better find something to do, that she thought he said, finally. And then she just got busy, and she found that her life was so full after that. So I just wanted to tell you about this courageous woman, and how many of us are simply home alone and maybe feeling a little bit isolated. Well, not a little bit isolated. Most women at home are isolated because we cannot work in a group. This is not a place where we have an office party afterwards and we get awards or rewards or anything. You determine how royal you want to live and what your rewards are going to be. And one of the best rewards, of course, is feeling happy feeling happy with your work, and feeling happy with your home. And I've always encouraged women, if there's something that's making you miserable at home, then you fix it. You learn how to fix it. And whether it's a color, whether it's a room that's not quite right. And I heard somebody say, whose husband had painted her house, she wanted a certain color, but of course we know that those little chips, those paint chips, don't look the same when they're completely on a wall. And after he put it on the wall, she didn't like it, and it made her even more unhappy, so he changed it. He said it's a lot better than having someone who's discontent at home. And so change what you need to change what you can change. It's really quite easy to do. Make your home a place that you would rather be, so that you don't have to go somewhere else to get happiness. And you can create your own stations in your house of places that you want to go, and you can create your own little career. You can teach your own children at home. I'd like to go into that more, because I would encourage you to write down what you know about anything. And if you start writing what you know, you have a whole book of things that you can teach to someone else. What do you know about life? What do you know about staying out of trouble? What do you know about health? What do you know? And you would have a lot more confidence if you knew that you actually know more than you think you know. And so today, I hope that this has been helpful, and I'm sorry if these figures of speech have been a little confusing. They were a little bit deep. But I hope that there will be light shed on the homemaker at home in her royal speech. And what I'm saying is this. You cannot, I want to bring this up again, which I did yesterday, and that is, there are some people that are just perpetually contradictory and negative, and eventually that can wear on you, and it wears on children too if they're constantly criticized or being told no. I was always told that if you can possibly say yes, say yes. If it doesn't harm anything, if you can possibly say yes, say yes, and reduce your no's to a minimum, so that when you do say no, they do have some deep meaning, and will have an impact, a greater impact. But if a child grows up thinking, my mother just says no all the time, then the no isn't going to have the impact. So make the no a special time, a special occasion. So I hope you've had your cup of tea, but I hope also that you have done quite a few things since I have been talking. Please leave a comment. Please leave lots of comments, and make me a list of things that you would like to hear. And probably you know more about most of this stuff than I do, but I'd be happy to to research it or talk about it at a later date. Anyway, until next time, God bless, and I hope you have a happy homemaking day. And thank you and goodbye.